Great. Thanks very much indeed. Yeah, I don't think I've ever given a talk that was about ethics before. I sort of wonder, do I do ethics? Is what I do ethical? And I decided it is. Yeah, amazing. It's like discovering you've been writing prose all your life. It's like actually I do ethics. But first of all, I'm a statistician. So the first thing, so I'm really going to be talking mainly about statistics and the ethics behind statistics. But I teach, the Stats 1B to the maths students here. So some of you even may have endured that. But my job now is as chair of this thing in the Winton Centre for Risk and Evidence Communication. Do you know that this maths department, I think, is unique in the world, is that there are 4 psychologists working here, 2 ex-BBC communication people working in the maths department. They're not studying you lot, so don't worry. But they, as I said to the staff here, you need more than 4 to study the people here. But what we're involved in is, well, here we are, this is what we're doing. We're paid by a hedge fund, so that's the first thing. I'm the Winton professor, Winton Capital Management. There's David Harding, is the CEO of Winton Capital Management. So all our work is supported by a hedge fund, by the charitable arm of a hedge fund, by profits from a hedge fund. So that's the first issue. Is that okay? Which we could come to later if you want. But here's what we're trying to do. We aim to ensure that quantitative evidence and risk is presented to people in a fair and balanced way. So that's the issue. That's what we are concerned with. And I realise, I think our whole work has got an ethical foundation. That we just believe that people should tell it how it is. That they shouldn't be distorting the message. They shouldn't be trying to manipulate or coerce. They should just tell people this is the way it is, and essentially let people make up their own minds. So it's quite libertarian as a perspective. We really are quite libertarian, and we get a lot of arguments about it. Should we be trying to persuade people to do the decent thing? So we'll come to that later, maybe. But we're basically take a fairly libertarian approach to this. So a summary of what I'm going to talk is that in the modern world, numbers, maths, of course, numbers are being used, often used to persuade rather than inform. And that's the way it is. That's in the modern world. That's what it is. And statistical evidence is increasingly part of a contested media, whether it's mainstream media or social media, or whatever. Claims, evidence shows that X, Y, and Z. Vaccines do this, GM does that, glyphosate is carcinogenic. So, I think it's absolutely vital to try to improve what's going on, what we hear, what's spinning around the media, and to be able to identify the rubbish and make a fuss about it and call it out. So I think both of these are roles for mathematically trained people. Mathematically trained people are needed in both of them. So those are 2 things I'd like to talk about. So I'm going to whip through it quite quickly because I would like to have some discussion. So the first thing I'm going to do, the fake news was only a great way to try to get an audience in. I don't think it's a useful term because there's certain people who have devalued it as a term. Using fake news, like Trump uses fake news as something he doesn't like. Now, he spoiled it. No, he spoiled it. The word, can't use that one anyway. So I'm not going to use fake news. What I tend to be talking about is not even lies. It's much more exaggeration or bullshit. People know the difference between bullshit and lies. There's a lovely book called On Bullshit. A liar is someone who knows the truth and doesn't tell it. He respects the truth. Liars really respect the truth. They don't tell it, but they know what it is. Whereas bullshitters, like some people, couldn't care less what the truth is. They just say what they feel like. They make it up as they go along. And if you say that's wrong, they don't care. They have no concern. So there's a big difference between lying and bullshit. And I'm not really going to be talking about complete lies. It's going to be much more bullshit and exaggerations I'm going to be talking about. So here we are. What's happening? Oh my goodness. Don't panic. Right. Numbers are often used, let's keep calm. Numbers are often used to persuade rather than inform. Okay, so here's a standard example. I won't go to the 350 million in detail, but this is, it's a number that's pulled out, and it looks like it had a lot of influence on what was going on. Still being criticised, still being discussed, still being argued over. It's not going to go away, the 350 million news. Things like that, when they grab the imagination so much. Although, I always think, that sounds like a big, 350 million pounds a week. That's look large. I think I can make that look fairly small, even if it were right, which it isn't. It's about, for the population of Britain has about a packet of crisps a day. 80p a day. Do we count? So that's so the way in which that number's framed, and each side, of course, using claims. This is for this equally rubbish number, I think, but never mind. Both sides were using numbers to persuade rather than for their rhetorical, emotional value. And I'm going to be talking quite a lot about the emotional value of numbers. This is the crucial thing. You may think, and I used to, numbers speak for themselves. They're cold, hard, sort of solid things, facts. No, they're not. They are items of argument. They can be used, they can change people's emotions. People can feel differently. They don't speak for themselves. They are embedded in a story. No matter how they're presented, they're always in a story. They always have an emotional impact, and we should know about that. Now, here is my sort of guru for anything ethical. Do you recognise her? Baroness Honora Neal, ex-Principal of Newnham, all-round good egg. She's terrifying. I don't think anyone's met her. But that tall, retired, terrifying woman. She's wonderful. I love her dearly, but I'm nervous about her because she's so clever. And she's a philosopher, studies Kant all her life. And if anyone wants to, I don't like TED Talks very much, still full of crap psychology, but if you want a good TED Talk, she's done one for TEDx Parliament, Honora Neal, 9 minutes, she managed to get in, it's all about trust, she gets in Kant, and she gets in trustworthiness, and she gets loads of jokes in 9 minutes flat. It's brilliant, and her life's work, just like that, brilliant. So she talks about who we should trust, she deconstructs trust, brilliant, her brief lectures, constant inspiration to me. And she says that trust should be based, she identified criteria, and we remember these are good, she likes rules of three, always good to remember threes. So the first thing, who do we trust? First thing we look for is competence. Okay, so can we trust, the stats? We've got to look for competence. And so I'm going to pick an organisation that produces stats, just arbitrary. I'm going to choose Fox News. I think why not? Just an arbitrary choice. They're the favourites of Donald Trump. So let's look at Fox News' idea of a pie chart to decide about their competence. They go quite quicker than some audiences, I must say. I should think so too. So that's you wonder about their competence in doing this stuff. They got some software, produce a nice, ghastly 3D pie chart. Okay, so her next criteria, though, is that we should be looking at honesty. So when you think about your friends, who do I trust? Your friends, you look for their competence, you look for their honesty. Okay, so let's look at Fox News in terms of their honesty, in terms of their use of numbers. That's their way of comparing 6 million with 7 million when they want to make the difference look big. So that's what they do. And it's an oldest trick in the book. We all know that. But they got called out on that. They actually said, people made a lot of fuss about it. A lot of these go, look at Fox News there, look how terrible they are. And they say, oh, no, it's a mistake. In other words, we're incompetent, we're not dishonest. And they redrew the graph. They actually produced a new graph like that. I thought, yeah, okay, fair enough, that's good of them to do that. But let's look at Honora's third criteria, and that is reliability. So your friends, you go around and check them, give them a little score out of 10 in terms of their honesty, reliability, their competence, honesty, and reliability. And so let's say Fox News are reliable, and we realise, oopsie, yes, help, panic. My little machine isn't doing rather well, is it? I'll carry on trying, but maybe I'll stand here and flick, maybe it's safer. Okay. So let's look at the reliability, and they are reliable. They always produce graphs like that if they don't make it. So yeah, they're reliable. We can So I'll just let's do the crummy Joe, just to show they're not the only ones who are not very good at pie charts. That's from CBS. Actually, that's my favourite pie chart. They're almost there, but they haven't quite got the idea. You see, there's work for you all in the media. Yeah, so that's not very good. That's just what happens when a scientist gets hold of a bit of software and doesn't produce a very comprehensible graph. So why might we doubt the science and numbers we're told? So this is an issue about, we as an audiences, what do we hear? What do we hear? Science and statistics. We realise that we don't hear them directly. Everything we hear comes through all these filters. We know about the filters. We always hear about that with social media. And I'm going to call that the pipeline of statistical evidence. And up at the start of statistical evidence, you've got the people who actually produce the stuff, the academics, in industry, people who do the surveys, YouGov, ONS do the surveys and things like that, but we don't see that. We don't see what's actually done. They're just they see. We have to, there's a first filter which in the academics, we only see through what's published in the scientific literature, already a big filter coming in. We only see what the policymakers and NGOs actually want us to see out of what they've collected. We don't see what's good. We don't see the information. We don't see the evidence. So they filter it out. And then, and that can be bad enough because we know that in fact just what gets into the press, scientific publications, is not always that great. In fact, a lot of it is exaggerated. And I won't go into the whole reproducibility crisis, except I think there is a problem. Not so much maybe that most of it is wrong, but certainly a lot of the scientific literature is grossly exaggerated for all sorts of reasons I could go into. So there's and this is the one, you know, I actually think this is an ethical issue, the fact that people are producing exaggerated, I wouldn't say, you know, there's fake science, there are of course people that just make stuff up, but that's actually a small proportion, around about 2% of people are supposed to actually make the data up. But a lot more produce very exaggerated results that get published. Okay, so then, but then, we don't even see most of that unless we read the scientific publications or read the reports from ONS. We don't see that. We see what their press offices and communications departments want us to see and how they want us to see it. And this is where I think a lot of the problems occur at the press office stage. And we need to realise that you know, what we see isn't what was produced. And then it goes on to the media, of course, and the journalists get hold of it. I actually think that what I'm going to say is the journalists are actually are not the weakest part of the chain. This is actually quite a lot of journalists are extremely good, do extremely good jobs. Some aren't, but most are very good. I like the journalists. But then someone sets a headline on it. The sub-editor who doesn't write the story. Most people don't realise the headline you read, they click on it or on the website. The journalist did not write that headline. Somebody else wrote that headline. And then eventually we see the answer. So the power of the press release. People study press releases now as an academic discipline. You know, to study the role of the press release. And so let's look at an example. This is of what happens with a press release. This is a spectacularly dull paper, sort of worthy thing, studying millions of people in Sweden. And they found that, what they put in the abstract, is that slightly more men, so yeah, we observed consistent associations between higher socioeconomic position and higher risk of glioma. Richer men got more brain tumours. Slightly. And it was significant, but only because they studied 2 million men. It was a tiny effect, but rich men did. And they said this could be an artifact because richer people get better health care and get better more diagnoses. So that's what they found. But then the press officers got hold of it, and they wrote high levels of education linked to heightened brain tumour risk. The paper wasn't about education, but that's a better story, isn't it? We'll say about education. And then that gets over to the media, and then by the time it gets to the, I think you might guess what's going to happen now, by the time it gets to the Daily Mirror, we get, why going to university increases the risk of getting a brain tumour? You're all to worry. There's all that, you know, all the brain heating up doing all that maths, you've really got to worry there. I mean, it's the most monstrous story. And in fact, what it is again is that the actual article by Andrew Gregory isn't that bad, given the press release. But it's again, the sub-editor stuck that headline on to get the clicks. And of course I clicked on that. I mean, who could resist it? Really, of course you've got to click on that sort of stuff. So this is what can happen. Why Marmite could prevent miscarriages and birth defects. It's a nightmare birth press release. It's a really perfectly reasonable study. However, the study was on genetically modified mice. And yet, but the press release, this is really sneaky of them, the press release didn't use the word mouse once. It said preclinical model. And made all sorts of claims about how this was going to revolutionise, you know, miscarriage care for miscarriages, the vitamin B2 for miscarriages. But it was only being shown to work in mice who had a genetic cause for having miscarriages. No idea that it would work for general miscarriages. Anyway, that was an appalling story that should never have appeared. I should say that one of the things that I do and other statisticians do is work with the Science Media Centre in commenting on stories before they get into the news, which I'll talk about later. We get them under embargo, we comment on them, and a lot of time we keep them out of the news. We kept this out of most papers. Very few people covered this story because it was so badly the press release was so bad. So we spend a lot of time keeping stories out. So if you think the stuff you read is bad, you should see the stuff you did that's kept out. Usually about causes of autism, endless papers, unrefereed conference papers on what causes autism. So we try to keep those out. So another role, very important statistical role. The importance of framing. We know about Danny Kahneman's work, Thinking Fast and Slow, that we have our emotional responses, our system one thinking, our non-conscious processes, enormously important to how we receive information. So framing is very important, the way the story is told. As I said, numbers don't speak for themselves. And we need to understand that. I think this is we're involved anyway. So here's a nice example. The 99% of young Londoners do not commit serious youth violence. Now that is a positive marketing message. So we're supposed to hug up the deed, we're all wrong about this youth. But what you're not supposed to do is do two tricks that I always try to teach everybody, which, to make this look into a bad story. I can make this look like a terrible story. The two tricks are you change it from a positive frame to a negative frame. 1% of young Londoners do commit serious youth violence. But even that doesn't sound too bad. What you do then is always convert from a percentage to an absolute number of people, so you can imagine. So the next trick is say there's 10 million Londoners, that's about 1 million between 15 and 24, that's 1%, let's call those young, 1% of a million is 10,000. Oh my God, that's 10,000 violent young maniacs in this city. I took this on a tube platform. I was standing there doing the sums, and suddenly go, oh my God, it's a really dangerous place. So that was a marketing message, but with mathematical skill, you can tweak it around and turn it into a negative message. I'm not saying you should, but it's just a useful skill to be able to do. So, but other people can do this rather cleverly. I think this is really brilliant. This is another yawningly dull paper. About 10% of people have a genetic variant that reduces the risk of high blood pressure. So a rather mathematically skillful press officer got hold of it, he didn't get any coverage, and turned it into a story where 9 in 10 people carry G, which increases the chance of high blood pressure. Isn't that brilliant? Exactly the same story, huge coverage around the world. Now, I would say that's not particularly ethical, in fact. Clever, works, not ethical. And calling it out and being able to identify this sort of stuff is incredibly important. This is just, statistics like recoding a 0, 1 to 1, 0, and just redoing the analysis. Yeah. Okay, so in the end we see this stuff, and it's filtered through down all these mechanisms, the press officers, what actually ends up being published perhaps, and the press officers, and then the headline gets on it. By the time we see it, I'm not a terrible, I'm so cynical about this. I've got what I call the Groucho rule, my rule of thumb. The very fact that I'm hearing a story about health, for example, is a reason to disbelieve it. Because if it's got through all this, it's almost certainly wrong. It's very cynical. It's a very terrible old man. Don't listen. Anyway, I'm actually going to be covering in passing quite a few of those, and I'm not going to read them all out. These are just all some of the tricks that the media use to do with numbers. They're all to do with numbers. They're all to do with, with the way the story is told about numbers, the interpretation of numbers, etc. And actually, I'm going to actually cover most of those. I won't bother to read them out, but they're all ones that you can identify as tricks. What I'm saying is that people are going to do this anyway. We need to learn how to spot this stuff. We need to train people how to spot this stuff. Here's an example. This was one that really annoyed me. This was just from a few weeks ago. Little evidence that light drinking practices harmful sex drives. This is the good story, the good headline, good story, good coverage. Very accurate. What it was a study that showed that women are currently recommended not to drink in pregnancy, but if they do, women are told, in the offer they're supposed to be told, this is on a precautionary principle, better to be safe than sorry, and there's actually little evidence that a couple of glasses a week will do your baby harm. If it's there at all, it's very weak. Whereas if you really slug it down, there's a likelihood that your baby will be harmed. But a couple of glasses of wine a week, no evidence, very minimal evidence actually does any harm. Okay, that's the coverage. Times, front page, headline was, light drinking does no harm in pregnancy. Whoa. Big difference between saying no evidence it does harm to strong evidence it doesn't do any harm. These are very, very different things. Now, and I think certainly the journalist understood that. The journalist was as cross about the headlines as anybody else. And the other thing you note about the headlines in quotes, nobody said that. That's not a quote from anybody that the journalist interviewed. And it's not even an opinion. Sometimes they use quotes in order to sort of summarise tersely the opinions of the people they talked to. Nobody even thought that. Nobody suggested it. People explicitly denied it. And yet that went in as a headline from the sub-editor, not the journalist, who was really pissed off, to be honest. The only person quoted in this article is me. And so I was pretty cross as well, so it looked like I might have said that. I certainly didn't. So we made a fuss, got them tweets, there were threats to take to it, so the press office thing. We should have just immediately reported them. Anyway, about a week later, what do you get? On page 34, some piddly little apology in small print. And that's what you get. Because that was a front page headline, grossly misleading. You know, whether that's a mistake, the sub-editor doesn't realise there's a difference between no evidence of harm and evidence of no harm. I don't know. I doubt it, but never mind. So I thought there's an appalling story. You said the headline for but it just shows what you're up against. It's good click. Good click. Good click on that. Anyway, so we've got to watch that. Now, here's Michael Gove. I won't make any comments about Michael Gove, but well, why not? I should. No. So people have had enough of experts. That's the usual thing he's associated with. No, I'm going to be really supportive of Michael Gove, because normally people cut that quote. That's the quote that's used. Michael Gove said people, yeah, they cut that. What he actually said then went on to say, from organisations with acronyms saying that they know what is best and getting it consistently wrong. And at that point, you start thinking, yeah, well, maybe he's right. You know, people say, oh, I know what's going to happen, then it doesn't. And they don't take any responsibility for that. So actually, therefore, this is not a bad quote at all. He did not make a blanket claim about people having enough of experts. And actually, this claim that people, distrust and expertise and this sort of thing, it's not backed up by surveys and statistics that are done. So I think that all that stuff is grossly exaggerated. There's still a role. People want good experts. They want help. They want advice. They want things to be clarified in particular. So I think we shouldn't be influenced by those claims. But so can we do better? If we're going to be experts, technocrats, or mathematicians, statisticians, can we do better? What can we do about all this stuff? Because there was so much tripe going around, not just in the newspapers, but everywhere else. Let's go back to Honora Neal. Gosh, she's cool. She is great. So she not only says, identifies the problem, she says what you should do. And she says, the main thing is we shouldn't aim to increase trust. We shouldn't, as sort of intellectual sort of people, say, oh, we should be trusted more. We know what we're talking, we're experts. No. We shouldn't do. You can't say we want people to trust us. We may, but we can't. That's not within our power. What is within our power? What can we do? And she says we've got to demonstrate trustworthiness. So this is the crucial word now. And it's really growing, trustworthiness. Rather than truthful, phrases like that, people don't like talking about truth. So it's not fashionable to talk about truth, but people will talk about trustworthiness. And for example, the Office of National Statistics now, or the UK Stats Authority, is really pushing this idea of trustworthiness as a thing to go for. So how do you demonstrate trustworthiness? Well, the first thing is that you can't just say, we are trustworthy. That's as bad as saying trust us. You can't say it. People must be able to check it. You've got to be open and transparent enough so people can check whether what you're saying is right. Not everybody, but for those who want to, need to be able to assess that trustworthiness, and that's the thing. So what she says, and this is a good rule of three. Remember this as well. Information, if we're going to be transparent and honest and open and ethical, because this is ethics. Information should be accessible, usable, and accessible. Now remember those, it's good. It's like the honest, competent, and reliable. Information should be accessible, usable, and accessible. So cool, what a communicator, right? So accessible, people have got to be able to get at it, they've got to be able to understand it, and they've got to be able to check it. That's what it means. So this is such a powerful idea. It's so simple, but it's enormously powerful and enormously threatening. This is deeply subversive, this idea. Because it means that transparency isn't going blah and sticking a massive spreadsheet on or worse, a PDF, an unsearchable PDF on the web. There's not transparency at all in any sense. You've got to be able to get at it and understand it, and you've got to be able to check it. So this is really, really a strong demand on institutions and technocratic people. So, Agnes is great, I love her. Can we do it? So what can we do to try to improve what's going on? Well, we've got to improve the quality of the stuff we hear. We've got to make it more trustworthy. And we can't just leave that. Okay, this is my big lesson to you lot. You can't leave communication to people who work in communication. Because they won't get it. They will not get it. They with help they can, they're great. I work with communication people all the time. You cannot just leave it to them. You have to be actively, or some of you have to be actively involved in the communication, and actively controlling what people hear and how they hear it. And so that's the thing. And the other thing is, we've got to train ourselves and others, and possibly write algorithms to spot the crap and to identify. That's the two ways in which I think we can contribute to improving what goes on. So, okay, improving the quality of what we hear. Let's do improving the pipeline, what comes to the pipeline. So, first thing is, improving the quality of what's published. There's a lot of work going on this now. And there's a nice manifesto for reproducible science, which is a mixture here of all sorts of psychologists and neuroscientists and statisticians. I don't actually was anyone's a real statistician. Well, then I won't go through in detail. One of the main things is the need for much more better training in statistics, much more statistical input, much more rigor in the way the maths and the stats is done. So that's one of the crucial elements in there, to avoid p-hacking and all those things that we've heard of. Okay, so I won't go into that, except that is an absolute crucial issue for future of science. Okay, now this is the stuff I'm personally more interested in, is improving the way the numbers are communicated. And I think, and this is, I don't know, I really do believe this. I think that on an ethical principle, but also a practical one, we need to admit uncertainty more. We've got to be more humble as scientists, as technologists, technocrats. We've got to be able to say when we don't know things. So I think it's one of the first things. What we're really saying here is that in order to counter people who overclaim, you don't overclaim. And I think that's just eye to a wrong, bad strategy. I just believe that's what you should be doing. You should be honest. You should respond to dishonesty by being more honest. And maybe it's naive, but I think that's what you should do. So, but it means working. As I said, you can't just leave it to these people. You have to engage with these people. You have to work with them. And in order to ensure impartiality, you have to be demonstrably impartial so that people can check your impartiality. So it's incredibly, conflicts of interest, I think, incredibly important. I think you should strengthen regulation. The rules got to be better. And, you can do guidelines, you can do training and education and things like that. You've got to tell better stories. We've got to be, again, you can't just leave it to everybody else. If we're going to be taken seriously as people who like numbers and really value them, and quantities and analysis and stuff like that, we've got to tell better stories. We've got to make people want to click on our stories, not the rubbish. So how can we do that? Okay, so these are a lot of challenges to people, to this whole world. Okay, here's my example. You may have seen this before. That it really gets at my goat. BBC. I shouldn't blame the BBC for this. It's not the BBC's fault because everybody was reporting the same thing. UK unemployment rose by 21,000. The Office for National Statistics said. That sounds like a fact, doesn't it? Yeah, rose by 21,000. Well, I wonder if it did. Let's actually check. We could go down and read the whole story about why it's gone up and why it's gone up. No, let's actually check, has it gone up? So what we do is we go onto the website we find where the data came from, and then we look at the options on that website, and we see that on section 20, we get the accuracy of the statistics. Pretty well done. At least you can find it. It used to be really difficult to find. But now you can find it. And then you get a great slide of text, and then you look at this, and it says that 21,000 has got a 95% confidence interval plus or minus 78,000. That's the margin of error. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that is accessible, to be honest. It was not very upfront at all as a
minus 57,000 minus 57,000 is up at the bottom.
Yeah. So it's between minus 57,000 and something. So it could have gone up, it could have gone down. It hasn't changed very much. So that's it. And the point is that almost all quarterly changes, every quarterly change in unemployment has got a margin of error plus minus 80,000. And the changes are almost never bigger than 80,000. So almost no quarterly change in unemployment is statistically significant. And the journalists don't know what to say. They do say here it's not statistically significant, buried down at the bottom of the website, not in a press release. So no wonder the journalists get it wrong. Now, I'd like to talk to some people about people who get it right. I think that banking are wonderful. Have you seen these fan charts that they produce? So these they do them for inflation and change growth, and just change in GDP. And what they do is these fans, that's a 30% interval, a 60% and a 90% interval. It's actually modelled, mixture of three normals, and then adjusted based on historical data, and then adjusted by the Monetary Policy Committee so that they make it a bit wider if they think we're really not sure what's going to happen. Huge uncertainty about what's going to happen in the future. Big uncertainty. And what's more, the 5% there and the 5% there are not even assigned. It could be anywhere down here. And it has been. In 2008 it was. So the tail error is not assigned. There's no tail to this distribution. Just 5% chance it could be somewhere else. So but what's really cool is that they say, well, we don't really know what's going to happen in the future, and they don't even put a central projection line in it. And they say, actually, we're not quite sure what GDP is at the moment, and to be honest, we don't know what it was in the past either. So it's pretty bold. It's got quite a lot of humility there, because GDP is revised all the time. Recessions come and go in history. I love these, I really do. And journalists hate them, because there's no actual concrete projection there. So they can't say, Bank of England thinks growth will be 2% in 2 years' time. Because Bank of England won't say that, they won't say that. They just say, give me uncertainty. So I think this is really cool, and this is Mervyn King introduced these, and since then, central banks all around the world have adopted this technology. It's got a serious humility about it. And so, newspapers loathe them, won't publish them. Bankers keep on producing, the media will not publish these. Anyway, so what we're working on now is, and we're going to explore these in sort of randomised trials and things, is looking at, well, can we use these technologies more often? So that's unemployment over the last so many years. That's the plus 21,000. Do you think unemployment really gone up then? No. That's not a factor of the study, that's just a slightly odd tail observation in the survey that they do. I don't think it's gone up at all. So what we can do, this is in our Shiny, you've got a nice little app where you can draw the lines up, and then you can put a fan around. You can't quite see it with the projector, but there's a 90% interval as well. So you put a fan around those. I think those give a much better feeling of what we might know about this, what we might be able to conclude about this. And the other thing you can do now with R is that if we think that all those lines have got a probability density over them, we can make the density of the ink proportional to the probability density, and you get what are called density strips, which are like that, which don't require any boundaries at all, no error bars or anything like that. It's just a blur that represents the probability density. Do people like this? Yeah, I thought you would. I love them. The maths audiences love this stuff. Everyone else hates it. Because they think they put their glasses on because it's blurry. I think
there's one thing I don't like about it,
yeah,
which is that the graph is going from the top right the way down to the bottom.
Oh yeah, I should change the axis. Yeah.
And,
that's a bit naughty. Yeah, I cut the axis.
So the change in unemployment looks absolutely enormous.
Enormous, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I should take this down to 0. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Very good point. Yeah.
David, at the same time, is the definition of unemployment the same?
Yeah, over this period it is. It's changed 47 times or something since the war. Unbelievable. What it means to be unemployed is a very, but this is a constant definition. Yeah, constant definition. Whereas crime is very difficult because they keep on changing what violent crime is. So that's, so the point is that we've now got a program on, with psychologists working on here, we've just got a grant to operate, looking at how can you communicate uncertainty without losing trust and credibility, in which we're going to be doing randomized online trials, both in using words and images, all the different ways. Because we know that error bars is the worst way to communicate uncertainty, is an error bar. It brings the eye to the least likely points for the extremes. And people think that it's equally likely to be within the bound. So error bars are a dreadful way to communicate uncertainty. So we're going to be exploring this. Okay, so let's just think about, again, how we could do this thing better. People have heard this stupid story many times, the killer bacon sandwich. And this is a dreadful press release from the WHO that all it said is that the evidence that bacon and sausages are carcinogenic is now strong. It puts in a strong evidence category that it is carcinogenic. Not that it's not how carcinogenic it is. It's purely it's like they reported the p-value rather than they reported the effect size. So they reported the evidence that's carcinogenic is strong, not that it's very carcinogenic. But people then said it was very as carcinogenic as cigarettes, which is nonsense. So this is what it actually means. 50 grams of bacon sandwich, 18% increased risk of getting bowel cancer. And that's how people were reporting it. Now that is a really bad way to report it. We know that reporting relative risks gives people an exaggerated sense of importance. There's lots of studies done on that. So what we have to do, and we know that, the BBC knows this, because it's in their guidelines, they've got to translate it to an absolute risk. So they have to look at how many people will get bowel cancer anyway. It's around 6%. You have to look on Cancer Research UK website, it's great for this stuff. And so we're talking about an 18% increase over 6%, relative increase over 6 percentage points. Now, you may be able to do this, possibly. I hope you can. I know of no journalist who can do this calculation. And yet they all know they should. Or most of them know they should. Not all. Most of them know they should. And so it's in BBC guidelines they should do this calculation. But they don't know how to do it. We're writing an app to help them do it. Because, you do need this. But the crucial is not only to, there's two issues. There's how to do it as mathematically, but how to tell a story. So what's been promoted now by us and many others is the way to tell the story is through what's called expected frequencies. The way to tell the story in a vivid way is to get away from the idea of probability and risk and percentages and things like that. So what does it mean for 100 people? So you can actually visualize the 100 people. Here's 100 people like you, smug, middle-class students eating your granola and blueberries every morning. But sadly, 6 out of 100 people like you will still get bowel cancer during their lifetime. Let's compare it to the 100 slobs, probably voting Brexit, eating a great big bacon sandwich every day of their lives. That's how many will get bowel cancer. That's the 18% increase over the 6 percentage points. There's one extra case. So there's all those people eating that every single day of their lives, and you get one extra case of bowel cancer. And so that puts it in perspective. And BBC News, by the 6 o'clock news on the day the story came out, they were using this, I wouldn't say metaphor, it's a frame to tell the story, a way of framing that story. It puts it in perspective. So, this is not high-level maths, for heaven's sakes. But actually, the nice thing is, whoa, what's happened here? The nice thing is that this is now in the UK schools, the GCSE 1 to 9 maths syllabus has now got expected frequencies in as part of the probability teaching. And we've written a book for school teachers, and we're going to get making a MOOC about it, for school teachers on how to teach probability using expected frequencies. So kids in the future will be able to do this calculation, even if their parents can't or journalists. They'll know how to take a thing like that and turn it into 100 people or 1,000 people. And of course it makes doing Bayes' theorem, all these things, incredibly simple to do that. So again, this comes back to the fact that the maths does not speak for itself. The way it's framed is incredibly important. Oh yes, I couldn't resist. Who couldn't click on that? I mean, really, you've just got to click on it, haven't you? Talk about clickback. You've got to. Why binge watching it? So here's an example of reframing a story to put it in perspective. And here's a nice. And then you find this. You eventually find this Japanese paper, and it says what happens with how many pulmonary embolisms people who've got who watch more than 5 hours a night, and you find out there are 13 out of 160,000 patient years of follow-up. And what that means, even if this was a true and causal effect, you'd have to watch more than 5 hours a night for 12,000 years to expect one pulmonary embolism, which, as I say, at which point it'll come as a relief, no doubt. It's an idiotic way to reframe the story, but it does put it in perspective.
But David, it is true that everybody who watches television eventually dies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think you should put that in as well. That'll make a good. I'll click on that. Exactly. I would click on that one. So this is a lot of these are to demolish these increased risk stories, to put it in perspective. And there are lots of people who do this. You'd have to eat 5,000 burgers a day and this kind of stuff. So calling out bad practice, and here's another example, the kilo roast potato story, Toastgate, as it was known in January. Potential cancer risk of brown toast. Oh, this is such nonsense. Anyway, we got this story again in advance of publication. It was great. Journalists got a hold of us, what do you think of this? It's rubbish. And so we did a blog on this, which came out on the moment the story came out, this blog was ready, and we were circulating the blog to journalists. We write on Medium, our blogs, and we had this running on for journalists circulating before the story was published. And you've got to get in there. It's no good being a day late. You have to get in there in the morning with, so that, and so I was on the Today programme and things like that, saying that adults with the highest consumption of acrylamide, that's the stuff on burnt toast, which at very high doses can give people or rats cancer. But they could consume 160 times as much and still only be at a level of toxicologists think is unlikely to cause tumours in mice. So that's sort of 10 loaves of burnt toast a day, and you should still be all right. So again, this is a putting it, like I said, an idiotic way to tell the story, but it puts it in perspective and it gets you on the news. And to be honest, I feel a bit guilty about this, by 11:15 that morning, the story, not just us, we weren't the only critics, we'd wrecked the story. And it was essentially being withdrawn, the campaign. It's still, I think it's still staggering on. But the chief scientific advisor now tells us no reason to worry. So it was a ridiculous campaign, and we called it out. But using, I mean, the point is that people have tried to find this link and haven't found it anywhere, so it just wasn't evidence. Okay, so, this is the interesting thing. The word hazard and risk we might use quite casually, but they have got technical definitions, and it's actually quite useful to define the difference between hazard and risk. They're different, as used in sort of health and safety world. Hazard is the possibility of causing harm. If you do risk assessments, down the left-hand column there's always the hazards, the trips, the things that can, and then you say what you've done about it, the mitigations, and you've got residual risk on the right-hand side. So the hazard is something that could potentially cause some harm. So a lion in a cage is hazardous, but it's not risky unless you leave the door open. So the other way, flying 6 miles up in a tin can is very hazardous, but it's not risky in a passenger plane unless someone leaves the door open. So it's, you've got to see, and yet these get confused all the time. There's currently a campaign, I must check that it's been successful, to make coffee in California carry a cancer warning label because it contains acrylamide. There's no evidence that acrylamide in coffee has ever caused a single cancer. And people have tried to find it. People have tried. So this is, a nonsense thing, mistaking. It happens all the time in pesticides and toxicology, but the fact that something can cause cancer at a high enough dose is then considered that this, or therefore should be banned. Well, no, it doesn't necessarily mean it should be at all. Okay, so helping people critique what they hear. So let's finish off now. This is the stuff, this is to do with education, and which we're trying to develop this course, this stuff. I mean, many people have got these lists. But I think I'm trying to boil it down to 3 components. First of all, asking, is a number trustworthy? So this is stuff you could teach journalists and kids and anybody. And this means reviewing the source of the number, the quality of the study, the margin of errors, because somebody, the number itself, can you trust it? Then is the source trustworthy? And this is the really difficult thing. Why am I hearing this? What am I not being told? What filters has this gone through? Who's spun it? And this is the really difficult, first of all, why am I hearing this? Because if you hear any number, someone wants you to hear it. Someone wants you to hear it for some reason. And what am I not being told? These are really difficult things to think about. I mean, the why am I hearing this now, it's going might be more feasible because on Facebook news feeds you can identify the reasons why, you should be able to identify the reasons why you're hearing a piece of particular information. And is the interpretation trustworthy? Can we believe the story? Is it correlation and causation getting mixed up? Is it just about mice? Is it really big? Etc., etc. So you can break these down into sub-questions, and I think these are teachable skills, I think, with good examples, that everyone should be learning now as part of, I think, citizenship. And there's lots of interesting stuff going on. Fact-checking, Full Fact is a fantastic fact-checking organisation, working with Facebook in terms of tips for spotting false news. And this is a really exciting thing, working with Google on algorithms to do real-time fact-checking. So this is I think, is a fact. If I was working on something, in machine learning or something like that, I would, algorithmic development. I think this is almost the most ethical thing you could ever do. Is because Full Fact's got a really good database of facts, and then to identify stuff that's being reported, and to do the automatic comparison. Maybe only to alert a human to check it. But at least, I think it's a really challenging but wonderful thing to try to do. And others are trying to do this stuff as well. Okay, so you can, this is signed about the Linden, who's a Churchill in psychology, looking at ways to beat alternative facts by training people, by inoculation, where you give them a little hint of what this is the sort of stuff people are going to tell you, this is the kind of myth that's going on, so that when people hear the full story, they're primed to identify, oh yeah, I've been told about that one. Because people don't like being taken in. Nobody, like, whether they're left or right, libertarian or conservative, or, you know, whatever they are, you know, nobody likes being taken in, nobody likes being conned. And so if you say there's these people out there trying to say, tell you this stuff, or believe it, then you can identify. Okay, so to conclude, I think to improve the trustworthiness of numbers, we need, what do we need? Accessible, I've got the usable and accessible evidence, and we need to improve public ability to assess the trustworthiness. And, you know, I think these are ethical issues, and I do think that the maths community, the technical community, has a huge amount to offer this, because this is stuff that people find difficult. You know, all these stories I put up, you know, think, oh, that's obvious or whatever. No, people don't. People find this stuff really difficult. It's not high-level maths, but I think it's incredibly important. Okay, thank you very much.
Right, so before I open the floor to questions from the audience, I just want to ask David a starting question. What would you say to a statistician who is going through and doing the statistics, like you showed that example of the statistics on changing unemployment, going through processing the numbers and then producing some document that's kind of buried on a website, many pages, and it says, okay, we did this and we got 21,000 was the change, and it's plus or minus this much, and so it's not statistically significant, and so it's sort of just gone like flump onto a table. I've done the statistics. All right, now it's someone else's problem. How do you sort of?
Yeah, it is tricky, but fortunately, and this has always been an issue that, you know, people have in sort of stuff. They've done it because there's always a massive attention to getting the thing in there in time. It's going to be 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, or I think it's Wednesday. I can't remember. There's a particular time. Everything has to be done. And if you've done it, as you say, you've done it. Sigh of relief. I've done my job. What I'm saying is that no, you haven't done your job. You know, or you know, this is not the end of the cycle of the job at all. It's how it's used, because you haven't gone through Nora's stuff at all. This is not transparency at all. You haven't done it accessible, usable, and accessible. Maybe it's accessible, but it's not usable or accessible the same way. So, but fortunately, the people at the top of the Office of National Statistics, John Pullinger, is really pushing this stuff as well. And he's trying to get, so now you're getting, there's bits in the ONS reports with a statistician says, and it's an opinion piece by the statistician about what they feel this means. You know, so there's a much more personal thing going out there. I still think they should be much more upfront about the uncertainties. The uncertainties on migration figures are more upfront. And there are now storytellers employed from the Office of National Statistics. And there's a visual ONS trying to produce nice graphics and things like that. So they're really making an effort to get out there. It's a long way to go. And I think it's, you know, but there is, within the stats profession, there's a recognition that it's not for everybody. Some people just want to be in the background doing this stuff. You always got to have that. But that actually taking some responsibility for that final bit of how it gets out there is important.
So the job of the mathematician, a statistician, goes beyond just doing
not
mathematics.
Not all. There's always some people, right? We know we like to be in the back, and it's not everyone's cup. This stuff is not everyone's cup of tea at all. But I think that, you know, within a team, that there needs to be at least one person who really takes some responsibility for how their work is presented to others.
That needs to be established, that everyone working in the team knows this is the person and they're going to take their responsibility.
And
you know what's going to happen.
Exactly, and one should be aware of the impact of your own work and how it carries through and how it's being used and so on. I think it does expand the role, and I think that's now become very important indeed. We can't leave this up to the communications people.
Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? If anyone is worried about being recorded, you can write down a question and we can read it out of the front. Otherwise, please speak up so that the camera can hear your question.
Not take any questions from him.
Anyone apart from
that?
That's not trustworthy.
Okay. Yes.
He's allowed one at the end.
Yes, yes.
How are the press releases done from the CMS and the Maths Department and you're the Winton Centre? how
Oh yeah. No, I think actually Cambridge, I would hope, are much better, and the comms department here, I think, are extremely good. I think because one of the things is that Cambridge is such a strong brand, they don't have to pump the work up. You know, they want to get coverage, but they don't need to, have a great big puff about everything. Whereas the places that are trying to build up their reputation and their brand really are puffing away and trying to get that. And so Cambridge, because it's a robust brand, can be much more open and honest and hugely supportive to the kind of things we do. So I think it must vary from university to but it's university press releases. You know, there's been studies of university press releases in science and finding the majority of exaggerations that happened in the press were already there in the press release. So there's a lot of work to do, and people are really trying to improve what's impressive. But they want there's incentives. They want the stuff covered. You know, they want to get their stories into the news. So I suppose I would love to feel is that you could still being honest about the uncertainties, and it's still good enough to get covered. The journalists say, we want to know the uncertainties, don't puff it up. Tell us what's there. We can tell it, we can do the balance.
Other questions? Yes.
So you talked a little bit about how newspapers will give you articles and stuff in advance under embargo.
Yeah.
In your analysis of that, and especially with regards to your response, do you ever get accused of biases of your own? Or trying to develop your own
Oh God,
thoughts?
I'm under this real thing because Roundup and glyphosate and whether it's carcinogenic or not. I've been quoted on that because there's a huge court case going through from Monsanto. It's been trying to decide whether to ban it in the EU, and it's a real contested thing. The EFSA, the official agency for food standards in the EU, says it's not carcinogenic. IARC, the bacon people, say it is carcinogenic, but IARC's review has been really criticised by the evidence they put in. Big papers just come out, massive study showing no evidence that there's any link with glyphosate with cancer. And I was quoted on a Reuters press release on that to say this looks like a good study, and it shows there's no evidence there's a link. Actually I haven't had that much abuse, but a little bit on Twitter and emails, saying I'm a sop for Monsanto. I don't get anything. I have no interest at all. If they'd said it was carcinogenic, I'd have been interested. That's fine. But, it's not fine by me, but I don't care. It's not. But I do care about evidence being based on emotive campaigns that aren't based. Campaigns being based on emotional items rather than what evidence is available. Because you ban a pesticide, an effective pesticide, which may have all sorts of harms and that sort of stuff. Something's going to take its place. And what's happening?
Yes.
You mentioned earlier that the libertarian stance the Winton Centre tends to take is receive criticism. Do you think you should take more of a political stance? Could you go into any more detail?
Yeah, not so much political. It's more in terms of individual behaviour change. Do we say, like the women drinking in pregnancy and things like that. If we start, saying too much about it, I got some, stick for saying, that means that women who do a couple of drinks while they're pregnant shouldn't worry too much about it. But actually, women drinking in pregnancy is a bad thing. And some would say that, and that is going on in public health campaigns, therefore you need to tell women that drinking in pregnancy will harm their baby. If you allow any doubt or say, that means that women will think, we can just drink in pregnancy. There's no evidence that that's what the response would be. So, particularly on alcohol, get some stick on that. Whether you should be trying to get people to do the right thing. So the whole thing is about nudges, which I'm very happy with nudges, and changing availability, regulation, pricing, all that kind of stuff. Minimum pricing, alcohol in Scotland is great, it's fine. But you should also then, when you've got the evidence for the basis of that policy, that should be presented in an honest and balanced way. You shouldn't fiddle the facts. That's what I feel is unethical. So I think it's a completely ethical stance. So I think it is reasonable to have a degree of paternalism in trying to get people to behave better, but you shouldn't lie to do it. You can do all sorts of other things.
These fan charts that you spoke about that these reserve banks now use,
Yes.
it seems like a really clever way to sort of outflank the journalists or the communications officers mathematically and say, well, here, we're still giving you facts. But this is facts that we know you can't tinker with.
Yeah. Well, exactly. But then they don't even cover them. They won't put the fact in the newspaper. Even the Financial Times won't put that in the newspaper, which is staggering to me because I think it's the most informative things. So, and that anyway. I agree. I mean, and that's one of the things with. We're talking to civil servants. They think, oh well, we do an analysis and we put all these caveats and so. But by the time it gets passed up to the minister, they've all gone. And all this, the error bars get scrubbed off, and they just get given a point estimate. And I think, that's the trouble with writing 2 pages of caveats. All can go. You've got to find a way of somehow simplifying the uncertainty communication. So it doesn't, as you said, so it can't be lost.
Right. More questions? Yes.
So how do you assess whether or not a study or a series of studies does have a bias? Like, for instance, there are certain numbers of studies in fields that are funded by a consistent source, and that's fair on one hand because those people maybe have the money in that industry or something like that, but on the other hand that could be because they have a vested interest in a certain outcome. So how do you assess
that's the transparency. That's the Nora O'Neill's transparency. You've got to have that transparency. You've got to have pre-registration studies, so they haven't managed to change the inputs halfway through. You've got to have that degree of transparency. And so that's why things like all trials movement try to get everyone, including the pharmaceutical industry, to publish their studies, pre-register their studies, publish all the studies that they've done. Because one of the biggest things is not necessarily the study is wrong, it's the fact that you don't hear about the ones that didn't go the way the company didn't want. So it's that massive selection. The thing you see might be completely perfect, but if you're only seeing 1 out of 20, it's hopeless, it's completely biased. So this is the problem, it's not necessarily what you see, it's what you're not seeing. And so you're absolutely right. I'm become very sceptical about everybody, not just anybody, because university researchers can have very strong agendas, not political agendas, but they've got career agendas and they've got opinions. They want to show what they so there's a lot of this wishful thinking goes on, and that's what the reproducibility of the science thing is about as well, is to provide incentives for replicating studies and for better peer review, better pre-registration. So all those things, people are trying to do something that's very complex because it's the funders and the researchers and the universities and everybody, journals need to have much better vigilance against that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Next question.
Not so much. Not so much question. But going back to just more a comment on the fan chart. I've come across them a few times. I've never, but until today, I didn't actually know precisely what they were showing. It just was getting a vague impression of what they're conveying. But you say 30, 60, 90. I didn't know that. Maybe it was. Maybe I thought it could be.
They're not very clear.
Maybe I thought it could be 50, 75, 90. I was thinking after you said that, maybe there should be some sort of key to say what that means. But I don't think it's necessary because it gives.
Well, I think they could label it if that had been for public consumption. You'd have big labels on it or pop-ups or something like that, so it'd be a lot clearer.
Right, I don't remember ever encountering.
No, the labeling. They've got a huge slab of text underneath. It's not great.
I've seen the image. I don't recall ever seeing it labelled as 30, 60, 90% confident. But I don't think it's necessarily needed to get the
to get the gist. There's the point about these things is that there's multiple levels of communication. What they say, the top level is the gist level, and that should be using colour, pictures, and trying to get no numbers in it. Cognitively, stuff that doesn't have a big cognitive load at the top level. And then when people want to know more, you can click and find get to the next level. If they really want to know, you can go further down.
David, as always, a very stimulating talk. I'd like to ask you a question on the first 2 sentences of the talk. First of all,
welcome to the Ethics in Math talk.
That's all I got out of the talk. No, very
what am I doing?
As you know, I'm very proud of the fact that we brought psychologists into mathematics. And I think that's very important. And how I'd like to illustrate it from the first two sentences, you said you have to tell it this is the way it is.
Yeah.
But now, it's a well-known fact, I'm sure you know too, that if a doctor says to a patient, look, I think you need this operation, there's a 20% chance, I'm afraid, that you'll die on the operating table. He gets a different response than if he says there's an 80% chance that you'll pull through.
Yeah.
So that's telling it the way it is. Either of them is telling it
Well,
the way it
yeah,
is, but totally different response.
Absolutely, but that's the crucial thing. You need to do both. So good practice would always be, say, 20 out of 100 will let you, not smart, and 80 will. And you show the whole part-to-whole comparison, you show the whole 100 people. So we know that positive and negative framing has an impact. And what you can never be total, you can never not have a story. You can never not, but you can try to be. And then the interesting thing is the impartiality, what I'm talking about there, we're talking about, is not to do with political impartiality. It's to do with impartiality in terms of we're not trying to coerce somebody, we're not trying to put a particular emotion, we're not trying to push somebody in one direction or another. And that's where, it's difficult, but you can try. You can try.
Some doctors would say, with very scared patients, it's much better if I say to them, there's an 80% chance.
Oh, well,
right.
yeah, I mean, you can't, exactly, and what we'd say is that at an individual level, we're talking about societal stuff here, at an individual level, then any mutual thing you need to take into account the needs and capabilities and the desires of the patient. And maybe they don't want to know any of this stuff, and that's completely ethical. It's not ethical just go put it out and dump something. So I'm going to tell you all about this, and exactly all the awful things that could happen to you, whether you wanted to hear them or not. No, that's not great.
Can I one other point?
Just if I can interject for a second, it's kind of like presenting a patient with a giant Sudoku and saying the middle number is the chance that you'll pull through on the operation. And all the information is there. They can go through and try and fill out the Sudoku, but you're not actually giving them information in a way that they can digest it. It's too much for them.
Well, we've got to test it. We're working. I mean, one of the projects is redesigning the genetic reports that people are getting about rare diseases, because those are incomprehensible, absolutely terrible information you get, because it's just about people covering themselves by dumping all this stuff on you. So we're redesigning all the genetic reports. Can I finish off with a few jokes? Go on. I can't resist it. I just want to point out what can go wrong. This is where when the media gets it wrong. This is. I said about mathematicians engaging with the media. This will be a warning to you not to do it. I wrote this book, Sex by Numbers, which is quite a good book, I think. Took a long time to write. It took a long time to choose the cover. That was going to be the cover. Yeah, quite quick. So, but they said, the cover that was a cover. And part of the stats in this book are all about the fact that people are having less sex. So the stats show that the surveys done in 1990, young opposite-sex couples between 16 and 44 were having sex. Median was 5 times a month, and by 2000 it was 4 times a month, and by 2010 it was 3 times a month. And I'm sure you can all do the extrapolation of what's going to happen. And so, and this is the sort of headlines that it gets. About frequency sex, it's because of iPads, and I think researchers do things because there's huge interconnectivity. Everyone's got emails, iPhones, iPads, and I think when I talk about this, I think it's because of box sets. Oh, but I can't come to bed, darling. I'm watching the latest Game of Thrones. So I said all this at Hay Literary Festival to an audience, public audience, and I got quite a lot of laughs. I did it very lightly, but a journalist was in the audience and didn't quite get the joke. So the next day, we had this in the Daily Telegraph. Professor. Oh no, this is disastrous. And then I was really cross, and I wrote a blog on it. It was rather abusive. She threatened to sue me. It all got very nasty. But I thought, oh well, who cares? Chit rapping. Yes, today's chit rapping. I didn't realize the modern media works. If someone writes a story with Game of Thrones, sex, and Cambridge Professor, every other outlet just sees this. They don't bother to check it, and they just take it. So Newsweek is Game of Thrones ruining our sex life. So and just suddenly couples will stop. that extrapolation was a joke. It wasn't a very good joke, but it was a joke. I think this is my favourite. Saxony Olsen putting one lone sign. After 40 years trying to build up a reputation. Oh God, it went to German, Italian, Cambridge from University of Cambridge. And Cambridge, the university was fantastic about this. Oh my goodness.
But David, I think you should be pleased with the power you're having.
No, it's really embarrassing. These stories still crop up now and then. Anyway, so, but one person got the joke. He must have been mathematically trained, I think. So this is Game of Thrones Keeping Your Sex Life in Forbes magazine. And he put the extrapolation there and took it forward to 2040. But I'm sure many of you might pre-guess this. He had the genius of extrapolating backwards. And by it worked out that in the year 0, people were having sex 200 times. And he wrote this sort of straight. So I think that was a good lesson to me that to be really wary about this and to show that, well, statistics can prove anything at all. So thank you very much indeed.